Hi, everybody. First and foremost, we would like to say we hope everyone is staying healthy and safe right now, and we appreciate that everybody's joining us today. The recent events, the coronavirus has changed the design industry, business as we know it, the world, substantially in a short amount of time. So Peter and I wanted to come together today to have a down-to-earth discussion on tax and business implications that will result from the pandemic here and how everybody here can navigate these uncertain times in a better way. So Peter and I have a shared passion for supporting interior designers. So we hope today's presentation is filled with really great information that you can use right away. Our other hope is that our small children don't interrupt us during this presentation. So just a little background on Peter. He is the Designer CPA, which we have worked with him in the past. So I'm sure you have checked out one of his webinars in the past with us. If not, they're up on our YouTube channel, so feel free. He also has a great website with lots of teaching tools, tips, lots of good information there too. So he has a bachelor's in accounting, a master's in taxation. He is a CPA and he is certified DM accountant with 18 years of experience under his belt. Many of you know me already. My name is Lindsay Paoli. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at Design Manager. I've been at Design Manager for 13 years now, and I came in right before the recession of 2008 hit. So I've always been interested in building up interior designers' businesses and building up Design Manager as well. So I am going to just hit on our quick agenda of the topics that we felt were really important to cover today, which is the stimulus bill for individuals, the CARES Act, which includes the PPP that everybody, is mentioning out there. I'm sure you're getting a lot of emails about it, seeing a lot of blog posts about it. So we would just kind of wanted to break that down for everybody. Of course, managing your cash flow and tax deadline changes. Since we have Peter here, we definitely want to just review some of those dates that everybody's been asking about, et cetera, et cetera. We did ask for questions ahead of time, so we have pre-populated the presentation with those questions, but we are happy to answer more questions as they come in. Everybody will stay muted, but please feel free to send in the questions on the questions pane, type them in, and we will try our best to get to them. But like I said, we did kind of pre-populate it with a lot of your questions that you already sent in. So as long as we have some time, we'll try and get the new ones in there as well. Okay, so I think I will hand it over to Peter now to dig in. And just one more little caveat, this information that we're about to present definitely is evergreen. It's changing every single day. It's changing by the minute. So we just wanted to get that out there as well. So I will hand this over to Peter right now. There we go.
Can you see it okay?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, great. Thank you everyone for coming on today and talking about this. Like Lindsay said, this is an ever-changing situation for all of us. I've been doing this for 18 years, and I would say that the last 2 or 3 weeks, as far as taxes are concerned and business and all of that kind of stuff, has been unprecedented, fast moving. As a good CPA, we kind of do continuing education, usually at the end of the year, but this has been like a crash course in continuing education. So I'm saying all that just because I'm talking now about what we have seen, but I also know that tomorrow Congress will hopefully seal up a new more funding for a stimulus bill, and I've also heard that a fourth bill, if that's the number at this point that we're at, is also being negotiated. So my point to all of this is that there are quite a bit of grants and loans and help and assistance out there. So now more than ever, it's important to communicate with your financial team and just kind of do as much research as you can, given your, your current situation, to try to keep your business as healthy as possible. So what I wanted to do was just start to talk about the stimulus bill or the stimulus payment that has been, some of it was released about a week ago. Um, I think the first question we kind of wanted to ask for this, and you can comment in the comments, is if you are eligible for it, have you received it or not? And if you haven't received it, have you been able to resolve any issues so that you know that hopefully it will be coming soon? And while people comment on that quickly, this stimulus bill has nothing to do with business owners. This is specifically for individuals. So because Congress felt like we need to get money in people's pockets as quickly as possible, we're going to either look at your 2018 return or your 2019 return if it wasn't filed. Each person under the income threshold will get $1,200 per person, with a $500 additional payment for each dependent under the age of 17. And I also included what the phase outs were starting at and completely phased out as you go along. So let's say you have not filed your 2019 return yet. There, someone is looking into the adjusted gross income on your personal tax return to figure out if you're eligible and how much. And as you are higher than that initial threshold amount, whether it's 75 or 150 or 112.5, your payment is going to decrease as you fall in that bracket and then completely phase out after that. So just wanted to kind of go over how they're calculating it and on that. So um,
It looks like we have
uh,
a mix of answers too as well. So we have
okay.
everything from haven't received, have received, have problems receiving. So
Okay. So
yeah.
if you have received it, that probably means that in the past you have direct deposited. So your bank account information is in the IRS database. And most people in that situation received a direct deposit on April 15th or a couple of days after that. Some people I know are having to go on a website that the IRS has set up on a link on their site to kind of confirm their bank account information. And then, without knowing what's being said, but you can tell me, Lindsay, it's possible that you might be at kind of a frustrating point of I'm not really sure, and they're not giving me good information as to why I haven't received my payment yet.
Yeah, we have a few people in that boat right now. Can't determine eligibility. The site's coming back to say can't properly enter the bank information, having issues there on the website.
Okay, so I know also I found out the first time last night actually, and or this morning, that one of my clients actually got locked out. They locked out the site for 24 hours too.
Mhm.
So if you have not gone on the IRS website to confirm all of that information, you will need some information from your most recent tax return that you have filed on your personal return in order to confirm your eligibility, to confirm your identification, basically, or verify your identification, I should say. So those things include just like your address, date of birth, social security number. They're going to ask you what your AGI is, so you're going to need to know where to find that on a copy of your tax return. And then I believe the last question they're going to ask you is whether or not you received a refund or you had to pay, and in what amount. So if you have already filed your 2019 return, use that information. But if you have not yet, you're going to have to use your 2018 tax return information.
Okay, and
Any other comments that
maybe we could send that link around when we send the deck around too
yeah,
of where.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay, great.
Because it's on the IRS website, but it's a specific URL at this point, I believe. Okay, so I think these are just a couple of questions that that we might have received that we wanted to include. So does the profit of your business play into eligibility for benefits from the stimulus? It is based on your personal tax return. So it would not, unless your business is, if you are a sole proprietor, if it's a Schedule C and your business, so if you are in that situation, your business income is going to be included on your personal return. If you are an S Corp or a partnership, that gets flowed onto your personal return as well. So it does take that into consideration when determining your adjusted gross income on your personal return, because your business income flows to your personal return and you pay taxes on your personal return for that. If you are a C corporation, then no, your business profit would not be affected for this stimulus payment, only because it would be on a separate tax return and your personal return is not affected. What is currently available in the stimulus bill for a single design working alone in an LLC sole proprietorship? Same thing. That activity would be filed on your Schedule C on your personal return. So based on that and all of the other income that you may have on your personal return, that's how they're going to determine the amount that you receive. Okay.
One more
Any?
question that came in, Peter.
Sure.
This is an interesting one. I did not yet file for 2019 and my income is much lower than 2018. Can I still submit for an adjustment to collect more stimulus money?
Okay. So um, right now, the answer is don't worry about filing your 2019 return, because I believe that they've already kind of made any decisions that they are going to do right now to get the money out as soon as possible. But all hope is not lost, because from what I'm hearing, next year, when you file your 2020 tax return, there's going to be some sort of reconciliation. Now, I haven't gotten final guidance on exactly how that's going to be done as far as numbers are concerned, but let's say if you're in the position that you just said, the person who's asking this question, or if you're thinking, well, in 2018, we made a heck of a lot more money, therefore I got nothing. The IRS is going to do a reconciliation on your 2020 return. And if your income is such because of all of the stuff that's going on or just natural changes in life, you fall below that income threshold that we talked about in this one. Now in 2020 you file, and because of everything that's happened, now you do find yourself under these income threshold amounts. Now they're going to give you um, something in the form of a credit. You're going to see like where you normally would have withholding for your W-2 or estimated tax payments, you're going to see something that reconciles that. That's going to be considered like an other payment amount, and that's how they're going to give people. That's how they're going to reconcile it, and they're going to give you credit for that in the form of a higher refund. So all is not lost, but they're just trying to get money out as fast as possible. And with everything going on, that unfortunately, if you don't receive it now, it's going to take, almost a year until you file your 2020 tax return. Any other questions?
Nope, not that applied to the stimulus bill.
Okay, so the next thing that we wanted to get into is the disaster loan and the Paycheck Protection Program loan. So first and foremost, this all started with the CARES Act. And so to talk about that disaster loan and grant, while I'm talking about that, if anybody has applied for the disaster loan and when they were filling that out through the SBA website, if you checked on, would you like to be considered for a $10,000 grant? If you could let me know if you did that and whether or not you actually received the grant portion or not. I'd be very interested to see if anyone has received that grant. And also, if you did receive the grant amount, how much did you get? But in summary, small businesses may receive a loan up to $2 million. Individuals operating as a sole proprietorship with or without employees or as an independent contractor may also apply. And you can use the loan on a wide variety of things. This disaster loan is exactly that. It's a loan, except for the grant part. If you are given the grant part, the interest rate is 3.75. They're giving loan terms up to 30 years without a personal guarantee. For loans up to $200,000, and a grant or advance up to $10,000 is the portion that does not need to be paid back. Has anybody said, yes, I received the grant money?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um,
We
are
also
they,
had a couple applies and haven't received anything yet. And then let's see, applied and haven't heard back yet, applied and did receive the grant.
oh,
So
that's great.
pretty 50-50 split.
Okay. So I'm not sure when you would have applied for it, but it, I'm assuming it might have been, 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe, those people that received it, because it was pretty quick before they said they weren't accepting any more new applications. So most of the clients that I had that did apply for this they have not received anything back from the SBA. So anyone who has received the grant portion, that's great. And that part does not need to be paid back. Was there any questions that came up based on this, or?
Um, Actually, just a question that we'll save for later for tax payments that applies to the other part of our presentation. But
Okay,
no, nothing else. Yeah.
okay. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program. Um, This is also considered a loan, but this loan can potentially be forgiven. Okay, so you've probably heard the most information, you probably saw the most information or heard from the most people about this program. Each eligible small business may receive a loan up to 2.5 times the average monthly payroll for the year preceding the loan, not more than 10 million. And these loans are available until June 30th, 2020. So to be eligible, you basically have to have a company that has 500 up to 500 employees. And these loans can be used to cover certain costs of payroll, employee benefits, interest payments, rent, mortgage, and utilities. Um, Anybody, if you, while I'm blabbing on about this, if you want to just write in the comments whether or not you've applied and what the status is, and have you, if you have been approved, has the money been funded? It would be interesting to see like what kind of percentage we're talking at this point, for people, and where each business is at. So there's going to be a complete payment deferment, including principal, interest, and fees. For everything that I've seen is up to 6 months after the loan period is when you can start. There's going to be no personal loan guarantee requirement, and loan forgiveness is available, which we're going to talk more about this in another slide, because that's what everyone is kind of applying for, because that's the sweet deal on all of this. Let's see. Okay, so there's potential forgiveness. The amount that does not get forgiven needs to be paid back over 2 years at a 1% rate. So that's a great rate. I mean, a great rate, a great time period. You're never gonna see anything better than that. And then the 8-week covered period, that period starts on the day that the funds are deposited into your business bank account. So what kind of responses are we getting at this point?
There's a lot. So one quick point about the forgiveness, one question actually. How
Yep.
do they decide if it is forgivable?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna talk. That's the most important thing. Any
Okay.
just did most people get funded?
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of really early on appliers, it looks like. A lot of designers on this right now are asking how the ones that did get the funding got the funding so fast, and it does look like it was the earlier
Okay.
people that applied
Well,
early. So,
potentially. So
yeah,
basically,
according to
here's
yeah,
the thing, right? So the federal government put the banks in charge of this program. So you had to. What ended up happening was this came out, and then at first they were saying maybe like everyone can go on the SBA website and just kind of fill that out, but then they put the banks in charge, and then each bank had to hustle to get ready, and a lot of banks came out with their own details for the application. So mostly applications were consistent, but a lot of banks asked for a lot of different backup and a lot of different questions and had their own timelines on when they were ready. So some of the people, what I would be interested to learn, because I have a small sample that I've heard from and what my clients have gone through, but for the people that got funded pretty quickly, are they using like smaller community banks versus the bigger banks? Because what I have seen is that not completely, but a very good percentage of businesses that got funded right away, that happened where they were using a community bank. They had a relationship with their banker. Their banker may have even contacted them before they even contacted the banker and said, "Hey, get this in as soon as possible because we're not really sure when we're going to run out of funds."
it is coming in. There's a bunch of people saying that have gotten funded. It has been through a smaller bank, a more
Okay.
community style
Yeah.
bank. Definitely.
So, you
A lot
know,
of people are interested in if employee size matters in getting the funding.
um, in getting approved of the funding, I
Mhm.
don't think so. It's not supposed to.
Yeah.
That's all I have to really say about that. But we're seeing
Right.
news stories of really big companies that applied for it that are now saying they're going to give the money back because they're being, internet shamed a little bit. So yeah. To be honest with you, I've seen my clients that have a team of themselves or one or two people, and I have some clients that have 10 to 15 to 20 employees that got funded at the same time. I think the most important thing is the bank that you use and the
Yes.
relationship that you have for a banker. And I think even for me, um, I use a regional size bank. I don't use that big of a bank, but it's um, kind of given me pause to say, like, you know what, like having a relationship with a banker um, is really important. Obviously, there's different factors that go into what bank you choose, but in this
Okay.
particular
People
situation,
are coming in here and saying that almost everybody that has been funded has said that they had a previous relationship with the bank, big or small. We have more big name banks coming in right now, but
okay.
they had a previous relationship.
And I think communication is really important because the people that use the big banks that kind of just put the application in through a website, but don't really have anyone that they can call and check in on that, were the ones that kind of were left out in the dust and really never even heard back about anything. So if you have been funded, the day that you got funded is very important when that money hit your bank account, because the 8-week period, that's when the time started, the clock started on the covered period that is going to be so important to determine the forgiveness piece. So if you have not heard back from your banker yet and you've got funded, it's important to kind of also like send an email and contact your banking team to see when they're going to have the application for forgiveness available, and if do they have a list of items already that you're going to need to supply with that forgiveness application. Um, they might still be busy now, but if you can figure out what your covered period is, and just make sure that you're keeping track of everything during that time. That's going to be the key. If you do not apply for forgiveness, it will not be forgiven. It's up to you to apply for forgiveness in a certain period, certain number of days after your 8-week covered period is over. Before I keep going, is there any questions?
Does it apply to sole proprietors as well?
Yes. Yes. So for sole proprietors, they can apply as well with their banks. Those types of business, what I've seen, if you don't have a formal payroll because you are a sole proprietor, so it goes on your personal tax return, you don't have to worry about paying yourself a paycheck as if you were working at a business. They're asking for copies of the tax return, the bank is. And then they're doing a calculation based on your profit. So if you've already filed your 2019 tax return, they're going to ask you for that. If not, they're going to want your 18 tax return. And I guess depending on the bank, I'm not really sure. I have had some clients that kind of have said, how quickly can we get the 2019 tax return done? Because now the bank is saying, I'm not going to even process the application until that's done. So if you have not applied yet and you're a sole proprietor, you still can. I would just say, if you haven't gotten your 2019 tax return, you can kind of push your accountant along to get it done. Your accountant probably is well aware that it needs to get done. They probably already know you're going to ask. So just, kind of nicely, ask them when it's going to be done.
There's a few interesting responses talking about following up with the bank reps. So it looks like there were some people that worked out really well for. So I wonder if that plays into it as well.
Yeah, so it's the kind of like the squeaky wheel thing. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to contact them because they are going, I mean, it's going to be up to you to, make sure you're being responsible with what's going to get forgiven. And also, they're so busy and inundated at the banks that you gotta be the one that's, being the bother, let's say, to get that wheel rolling before, because what we're seeing is once you do get accepted at some point, the steps usually are, they say, like, you have been accepted, we're going to send you closing documents, you sign them, and then after you sign the closing documents, within 48 hours they fund your account, and then that 8-week period starts then. So
How about have you seen any advice on keeping the money in a separate account and paying payroll out of that?
yeah, so some banks are saying that companies have to keep the amount in a separate bank account. If you have a formal, payroll processing company, most of the big, actually most of the payroll processing companies, if not all of them, have been pretty good with getting the reports that are going to be needed to apply for this if you haven't already. And they're also doing a pretty good job of accumulating reports so that you're going to have everything that you need to include when it comes time to apply for forgiveness. So that leads us to another slide. Some people were asking us, what reports do I need to provide for the loan? The most important thing is just to make sure you either get a list or you talk to someone from your financial institution to know exactly what you need to apply, and also what you're going to need to apply for forgiveness. So any payroll report that you have is going to come through your payroll processing company. And I've seen like Gusto and ADP and Paychecks have put in there. So when you're logging into them, they've kind of put this COVID-19 section where you click on that, and anything that you need is kind of in there, so you don't have to worry about it. If you are a self-employed business and they're asking for your copies of your tax return, then you're going to need that. If you haven't filed and they want to see backup with a profit and loss. Lindsay has included a couple of different links in the presentation that will help you when you're searching for the things that you may need in Design Manager. And we're also going to send the slides as well to everyone so that you have access to these links. Any other things you want to say about that, Lindsay?
No, I think it's just that a lot of people have been asking about it, but the fact that like what Peter is saying is that it depends so much on the individual bank. We even had somebody comment earlier here just a few minutes ago saying that the reports that they submitted were blurry and then they got rejected and they had to start over
Oh,
from scratch.
geez. Yeah, I've heard of banks asking for copies of bank statements, even though they're a bank and they have all those statements. Which is crazy. I've heard of banks kind of asking questions that, like, do you have a credit card with us? Do you have a business account with us? Asking um, and requesting personal documentation, even though there is no personal guarantee on these things. So because the banks were put in charge, they kind of have been able to kind of just do it their way. And I found that most of the smaller size banks kind of made it more straightforward, let's say, the whole process more straightforward than bigger banks. Just, yeah.
Um, can the money be used to pay mortgage and not just mortgage interest for the office?
Yes, yep. But
Yes.
we're gonna go over more of the details of how the forgiveness is potentially going to work.
Okay.
Um, So let's just go through that. And then,
Right.
we have some standard questions too, and I'm happy to answer other questions as well. But um, do we have to maintain the same exact staff for the loan to be forgiven, or just the same number of staff? Number of staff is going to be key, as well as the dollar amount of payroll. So the forgiveness equation is going to be based on number of full-time employees between the covered period versus um, before all of this happened. Um, but also the dollar amount is going to matter too. I have two employees who are on 1099s. I'm not on payroll either. What loan program can I get? So anyone that you're paying on 1099 is considered a contractor themselves. So that would not account. That would not count. They're not your employees unless you have them on a payroll and you're paying employer payroll taxes on them. Those people who are getting paid by the 1099s by you are probably also applying for the loan, which is why it would be like double dipping, I guess, for it not to. But the fact that you're not on payroll either does not matter if you are a sole proprietor and you're filing a Schedule C and you have a profit and you're paying self-employment tax on that profit. If you are just starting out or you invested a lot in 2019 and when you filed it, you're reporting a loss for a profit, not a profit, but a loss for a business activity. You didn't have any profit in 2019. I'm not sure that you would qualify for this particular program because they're probably just looking at 2019, but I don't know if a bank is also kind of looking at your 2018 return and kind of doing an average. I'm not sure, but from everything that I've heard, they've been asking for the 2019 tax return, and that's all I've heard. Our interior designer is actually getting approved for assistance. I think you guys just answered that question, which is awesome.
We
That
did have one person comment though that they got told by somebody that it didn't apply to the industry.
Yeah, that's not true.
Right.
Nope. As long as you're a business in the United States with up to 500 employees, it did. The only industry that I've heard of that is not eligible, and that was before, I don't think it's changed, is the farming industry. But any other industry is I would not be worried about the design industry getting not approved in this situation. Will the Paycheck Protection Grant be taxed and at what rate? Okay, so the one other thing is that if you are someone who commented that you did receive some sort of amount, whether it was less than 10,000 or up to 10,000 for that disaster loan grant piece, you are, when you're filling out this PPP loan application, you've got to say that you received that, and they are going to reduce the potential amount you could have received for the loan by the grant amount. So if you were eligible for 20,000, let's say, and you already received the $10,000 grant portion, then they're only going to actually fund 10,000 of it. Will it get taxed at what rate? So as of right now, they're saying that if you fill out the forgiveness application and you fall in the threshold, that the loan amount will get, or a piece or all will get forgiven if you fall into the right situation. And normally, if a loan gets forgiven or written off by a credit card company or other loan institution, you'd have to pay tax on that as forgiveness of a debt. But this will not be taxed. The forgiveness portion will not be taxed. The only thing is if you don't get all of the loan forgiven or a piece of it or whatever does not get forgiven is going to have to get paid back over 2 years at 1%. So when you're getting accepted, the closing documents, when you sign them before you get funded, is going to give you that information, and they're going to base that on you not getting anything forgiven. They are going to let you know when that first payment is due, like 6 months after, how much your payments are going to be, and kind of when that last payment will be due. So you'll see all that details when it comes time to sign your closing documents before the loan gets funded.
Okay, I think the only other questions that we have coming in surround the disaster loan versus the PPP loan. And I think there's some confusion about whether you can do both or not do both.
Yeah,
And
so there,
people get
yeah,
funded from one while they were in the application process for the other, and they were worried that that it would affect the other
so
one. But
technically you can't accept both. You can apply for both, but you can't accept both. So um, if you're still waiting for both, I would have a conversation with your financial team, your CPA, someone about what they think is the better one for your situation. If you are planning on using, if you get accepted for the PPP loan and you're still having all your employees working and you plan to use the funds mostly on payroll, and it's potentially going to get forgiven and everything, and you're going to continue to keep paying your employees, then the PPP loan is a really good option. If you don't think that you're going to be able to bring back your employees by June 30th, and you're really not sure, then the PPP loan may not be the best option. So it's kind of one of those things that you kind of have to have a discussion with your financial team to figure out what's best. There's also going to be, if you get rejected for the disaster loan, the PPP loan, and you're not able to do anything, they are also talking about deferring payroll taxes as well as giving payroll tax credits in the future. But you can only take one of those options. So for now, if the PPP makes sense based on what you're seeing and you're applying for those, don't worry about the payroll tax credits. Just, get in as much as you can to the bank, keep the ball rolling. Even if you're one of these businesses that may have received something from your bank, which I kind of got the standard emails even from my bank that kind of said, we're out of money. But we don't know if we're going to get any more. So if you still have things back up that you need to get done and in, please do that. And then yesterday I got a standard email that said, hey, there's going to be more money. So if you haven't applied yet, you can apply yet. So all is not lost now. Last week, like if you found out like that you weren't accepted or wasn't even looked at, your application wasn't even looked at, the it probably will. So we got to just, keep going and seeing if your bank needs anything, just get it to them. Was there any other questions?
I think we can go through and answer some other ones or in our other part.
Okay. All right. So where are you in the process? We already kind of talked about this. Um, we talked about the disaster loan. You can directly apply for on the SBA website. The PPP loan, you want to go through a SBA lender and fill out the application and do that way. The last thing that I want to talk about was the forgiveness part. Maybe we missed a slide. Maybe I missed a slide. But if it's a copy later, we'll just skip over it. What you want to know about the forgiveness detail part is everything that I'm seeing today, with the caveat of it could change, but I hope it doesn't, is that during the 8-week period, from the day that the business gets funded with the loan to 8 weeks from then, 75% of the loan amount needs to be used for payroll in order to get the maximum amount of forgiveness. So, for example, I have a list of all my clients and who applied for this, and then I'm keeping track of what day they're getting funded so that I know when their 8-week period is up. And then we're kind of just gonna figure out during that period how to what it means to get 75% of payroll paid in. And when I say payroll, I mean wages, tips, bonuses, which would be included in wages, as well as group health insurance plans. So the loan can also be used for those mortgage and rent and utility payments that we talked about, but only up to 25% can that be used for that stuff in order for you to apply for the maximum amount of forgiveness. If you don't get forgiven, you're just going to have those terms, 2 years to pay back. But if you do get a portion or all of it forgiven, that's the key to think about, and what you need to communicate with your financial team or figure that out is whatever my loan amount is at 75%, can I get 75% of the loan paid to the payroll items? And if you do, you'll have a greater chance of getting the forgiveness. All right.
Two more questions.
Sure.
Interesting one. We've had to lay a few people off as the PPP funds that we were hoping for did not happen. So now our headcount is lower than what was listed on our application. Is that going to count against us for forgiveness if we get funding in the next round?
So they are going to compare the headcount with the previous period that they're looking at. So even though you had to lay them off, if you're in a situation where you're going to get funded and that means that you can bring everybody back and start paying them, you have until June 30th to do that. But you obviously want to do that before that deadline, but you're going to have that 8-week period to bring everyone back and pay it. And then on June 30th, or if the date before that is your end of your 8 weeks, whoever you have on payroll then that you continue to pay, that's the number they're going to look at to compare versus what you have today before you find out whether or not you've been accepted for the loan. If that makes sense, I hope that makes sense. But you have time basically to bring everyone back and pay them and still achieve the forgiveness.
And how does that work then for a sole proprietor that doesn't have any employees?
So you've got one person, it's you, and then you've got one person, it's you. So you are going to, they're going to have to figure out, and this is an interesting thing that final guidance I haven't really completely seen. Like I'm sure the banks have an idea. They know how much your profit was in 2019. They can figure it out, a factor of that based on an 8-week period. I don't know if they're gonna, I don't know how they're gonna do that part, but they're gonna somehow compare how much you would have earned or your income amount or what it should be during that pay period, and maybe that is going to be. But to be honest with you, that is something that's still vague. And even like I'm in a CPA group, and we're all talking about it, and it's kind of like how are they going to figure that out for sole proprietors? So I don't know if the banks have come up with a method yet, to be honest with you, but they're going to have to do something quick if they haven't already. So I would say just make sure you're talking to your um, the person at the bank and figuring out exactly how or what they want to calculate the forgiveness part when you're a sole proprietor. Yeah. Anything else?
A question about highly compensated employees, whether they count or not.
Yeah. So up to 100,000 for each employee. So it caps at 100,000.
Okay,
So when you're calculating how much is getting paid through that 8-week period, the max you can use for each employee is 100,000.
okay,
So they're, you know, some people, if they were thinking, I don't know if this is why they did it, but they might have like, I'm going to just use all that money and say it's payroll, but pay myself as the owner more money and, then get it forgiven. That's probably why, because they want the maximum amount of employees to still get paid during this time, because that was the whole point of it. While people are home or they can't work or, whatever these, restrictions that we have now, they want everyone to continue to get some sort of paycheck.
okay. And then is the S corp, is that kind of similar to the sole proprietor in a way, with like
So
the
if you're an S corp, it's going to be based on the W-2 on the paycheck information.
okay,
Not to get too detailed, but it's going to
okay,
be on how much you're paying yourself on payroll, not your total profit.
right, got it.
So if you normally make 100,000 for a profit total, you pay yourself out 50,000 in a salary, and the rest is just you have to pay tax on it. They're only looking at the 50,000 because that's how much you paid yourself in payroll. So you got to look
Great.
at that number. So um, we wanted to include some cash flow reports that you can directly find in Design Manager. All of these are great reports to kind of look at, and you can customize it based on any sort of period that you want to look. If it's last quarter versus prior year quarters or annual or even cash flow by month, which is one of my favorite ones, because these are going to kind of show you what you truly spent money on over the last 12 months. And then that's kind of when you're talking about, okay, if I'm looking at the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months of uncertainty, what do I actually spend my money on? These reports are going to give you more detailed information, and then you'll be able to kind of make decisions from there. And there is an entire webinar on cash flow on there that you'll have the YouTube link to when we send those slides. But just some solutions to this that you can kind of think of that I've seen other clients doing right now is, can you get some rent abatement? Can you get your rent deferred for your office over a certain amount of time? Can you negotiate with your landlord on a cheaper rent amount for a certain amount of time? you know, a lot of landlords are different. Like that, some are willing to do this because they know they want to keep their tenants long term. Some aren't. But if it's something where, like, I had a client and they said, like, I was able to get a 6-month deferment and I have 2 years to pay it back, and they're just being super helpful for me, and that's great. Um, and then just kind of look at how much money you're spending per month. Like, we all have the monthly subscriptions that we have. Do we really need those? Can we remove anything that's not necessary? And can I negotiate right now with a lower price? If you haven't talked to your cell phone or your telephone provider in a couple of years, maybe they have a cheaper option. Do you really need, you know, um, 52 million new folders that we get? Can we stop buying so much stuff for now? Um, those are just some options that you have, but I think the most important part of um, the cash flow piece is just to make sure you're paying attention. I mean, I always say that you should be paying attention anyway, but now more than ever, it's so important to kind of have that team that you can look line by line and make decisions from there, because we really don't know how long this is going to last. So any opportunity that you have, to negotiate a lower price, or even just completely getting rid of an expense every month, it would be super helpful. So
Yeah, so we also had some general business questions come in throughout. So we thought we would address those as well, just because they're so specific to interior design and go along with our discussion. So one of the biggest ones was, should I lower my fees during the current times to get more work? What we've been seeing when we talk to interior designers every day is that it's harder down the road to then bring that hourly rate back up for those customers that you give that discount to, that it's actually not worth it to lower your fees. But there's lots of creative ideas that our designers have come up with. I know that a lot of people that responded to our survey that we recently sent out have been offering e-design solutions, some packages, and then things like donating to charities. When somebody purchases your e-design package, the interior designers have actually decided to donate a portion of those profits to different charities that are helping with COVID-19 related issues and things like that. Also, just the same as we were just talking about with your current vendors, do the same with your clients. Maybe you can think creatively with a payment plan. You could go monthly
mhm,
with them or something. Create that retainer deposit, scheduled flow versus having to actually take down your hourly rate that you feel strongly present your value as a designer. So
yeah. I
that's
can
your
I would
nice.
say also, you're not giving up that value, so you don't want to do it that way. But certainly two things. One, like you said, Lindsay, is, doing some sort of creative package or whatever to say, like, you don't have to pay me today, but, like 30 days or whatever like that. But also, I just wanted to say, like, it's important to also look at your accounts receivable report in Design Manager and just see um, who hasn't paid you right now, and just kind of nicely, communicate that you still are going to be expecting payment, and just see, because, checking in on them and just coming up with a plan to show that you care, but also that you're expecting to get payment at some point is really important, because the longer you wait to get cash is the lifeblood of your business. So um, that's
Totally agree.
really important.
And then we had a lot of questions surrounding vendors and how to know who's going to be reliable and who's going to stay in business. And, I mean, we wish we had the crystal ball, of course, and the magic 8 ball in front of us. But really what it comes down to is, are they open? Are they able to take the orders? And are you able to make the orders? Because if you are, yes, absolutely support them, because that's what we need. We need to be supporting everybody that we possibly can, especially if you feel like you have a decent relationship with that vendor. If it's a brand new vendor that you just started working with and you're not quite sure if they will make it through, they're a little bit smaller, less trusting. Yeah, maybe you hold back a couple orders in that regard. But if you have the funds to do that, keep the process moving. It'll help the whole industry get through it a little bit faster. lean on marketplaces because they have finished goods that don't have to be manufactured. That's always good advice. And then we did find through the Business of Home article that we saw, they started a Google sheet of what vendors are staying up with shipping and deliveries and things like that. So I've included that in the slides here so that you can check on that when we send out the deck. And we'll try to get that out as soon as possible by tomorrow. So I think that's pretty much what we had for that, unless you had anything on that, Peter.
Well, I was just going to say, I had gotten a couple of questions from clients that said like, I have, someone who is a potential customer who wants to give me money, but I'm not sure if I should take it because I'm not sure when the vendors are going to be available to do this. And I kind of said, well, as long as you're communicating that you're still keeping up with the vendors and it might take longer, but that you are going to get it to them as soon as possible, there really is no reason to not take that retainer. I mean, I wouldn't take the retainer and then just be like, I don't know, we're in a pandemic, so, whatever. But certainly communicating with the vendors and communicating with your customers is just going to go a long way to easing everyone's fears. And that way everyone will know how the project's going. And I think it'll just, and it'll certainly help on a cash basis. So certainly don't spend all of that money before you place orders, or whether or not what they're gonna, long term, if they're gonna need a refund or anything like that. But certainly getting that in your account and having that there is a good thing. What are the top things every firm should be spending money on now? Anything that you need to stay in business. I know that's a generic thing, but obviously anything that you need to stay in business. And also, I've heard this a million times on different webinars that I've heard and different articles that I've read, but just don't forget about marketing and being out there and making sure that you're still being seen on whatever your potential client base is. So.
Yeah, what we've seen through our survey and again through talking to all of you, save the cash. Cash is king, obviously. Pay yourself first if you're the business owner. That is super important. You can't forget that even in, these kind of times. And focus on that marketing. We saw a lot of great responses in our survey that was, putting together social media campaigns that really, really highlight your differences, between other designers in your area or just other designers in general. Focus on what's going to be important going forward so that your business is ready, to come back stronger than it was before. So, and then the only word of advice too that Peter and I had thought about before was just don't spend money on capital expenditures at the present time. Put a pause on those.
Yeah, because we just don't know how long this is going to be. So. So the last thing we wanted to share with you is just some changes to the tax deadlines. So you haven't, if you have not filed your 2019 tax return, you have until July 15th for federal to file that return before you have to do an extension. And also any payment that's due for 2019 now has been extended to July 15th. Most states are following, but not all of them. So that's a really important thing to say, is that just make sure that for all the states that you're filing, exactly, because some of them have extended, but not till July 15th. So that's just a little caveat about what's going on. So now you're looking at your payments for 2020 estimated tax payments, and normally one would be due April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, and then January 15th of the following year. They have now for the federal, they have now fast forwarded and kind of deferred all that to July 15th, which is great, because now you have kind of more time to see what is going to happen with your profit during this time. So you could have had an amazing Q1, and normally you would have to make that payment on April 15th. I'm advising all my clients now to kind of for me personally, I'm going to check back in with them in about a month just to see how things are going and whether or not it makes sense to get ready to make a payment by June 15th or July 15th. And most states are following through, but the same thing, not all of them. The states are going to be super strapped for cash. So some of them are following suit and others might just be giving you a little bit and some may not be giving it at all. But you want to just make sure that you don't want to pay in too much. So some people, I have some clients who are nervous that say, what if they change their mind and we should have gotten a payment in? Don't worry about 2020 payments today. Just kind of see where that profit is going to go and then make a decision from there. This time is a time to keep your business open and make sure that you're, using your money on things so that long term you're going to have a business. There'll be plenty of time to make, tax payments for 2020. And just not to keep repeating it, but very important to just check every state that you file in because each state is kind of going on their own timeline. So I think that's it. So if you use a CPA, I would suggest, kind of contacting them by the middle of May just to ask if a projection can be done at some point before June 15th. That way you have an idea of whether or not you are going to owe anything to make a payment by July 15th, or if it makes sense to just kind of wait till the fall and see how everything's going.
Okay, I think we have just maybe one or two more questions if we can fit them in. I know we're going over time a little bit here. Is there a deadline for the disaster loan program to get in? There was a deadline for the PPP, but I don't know if there is.
I don't think there is, because the disaster loan is something that's available for people. Like before this happened, it was still something in existence for like flooding or some other type of disaster. We were just saying before things got super crazy was, if you lived in a state that has been affected by this, you could apply for the disaster loan. And then it was like, okay, every state is now dealing with it. So
can they apply to more than one bank?
I believe you can. You just don't want to sign closing documents for two. So I believe there is a question. I don't know the exact words, but there's a question when you fill out the application that says, I think it says, I have not received any PPP funds from a different lender. So just don't accept those. Don't sign them on two different lending and financial institutions.
Great. Yeah, I think we're pretty good then on questions.
Awesome.
So thank you to Peter for joining us today. Thank you everybody for joining us today with your limited time. A lot of working parents have less time than they did previously, So we appreciate your time.
There was no screaming kids.
Yes, for
Succeeded.
once. If you have any other questions, we both put our emails in here, and please feel free to reach out to us with those questions. Again, we'll be following up and sending this deck out to everybody, and we'll try to include the links that we may have missed along the way. And stay healthy and safe, of course, and we really do want to be here for your businesses. We've been here a long time, Design Manager as a company, so we've seen a lot through our long history, and we're pretty confident that we're going to come out stronger on the other side as a design community. So have a good day, everybody, and thank you again, Peter.
Thank you. Good to see you.
All right.